Hello, everyone. We are doing Bible study. We're going to be in 1 Samuel chapter 13. You have 5 minutes to grab your Bibles and to leave Grimm's stream. Grimm, this is no offense to you, okay? It's just I always do it at the same time. So, yeah, it was a good stream. But we're going to start in 5 minutes, okay, guys? Hello, Cassandra. How are you?
Fine.
Fine.
Fine. Oh, yeah. I had my wisdom teeth pulled and I got an infection in my ears. So I was at the ER this morning.
Oh, wow. When did you get your wisdom teeth pulled?
Last week.
Oh.
It's been like, I don't know, 10 days or something, but.
Can I ask, how old are you?
31.
31. I'm 38, and I have to get my wisdom teeth pulled. Just like I waited way too long. No one talked to me when I was 18 about doing it. They just went, ooh.
Yeah. I didn't know you had to get them out, but they took them all, so.
You don't if you got into mewing. Do you know what mewing is?
Yeah. Would that have saved me if I had just mewed?
Apparently, if you mewed as a child. I don't know. It kind of makes sense to me. I don't know how far. It's one of those things that there's so many like rabbit trails you can follow online. And I was just like, this might be correct, but I can't care. I've
You
made
can't keep up the streak.
Yeah. What am I going to focus on? Right. I can focus on different things. And you know what? I'd rather listen to a Bigfoot podcast than a dental podcast. Okay. I'm saying not that I do, but that I've listened to more on Bigfoot than I have.
But you're curious.
I'm curious. I'm curious about.
You're Bigfoot curious.
Yeah. More than I am about dental hygiene. One of these things affects me more than the other. That's funny. Well, I'm very happy that you came in. We are going. Ooh, Dawn was allowed to keep hers. Yeah. Yeah, mine are fully grown in, but they're kind of wonky in the back. They're not like facing down; they're kind of facing out. And
yeah, well, I was told mine were half in, half out of my gum, so I guess that's why they took them all. I thought they were just going to take the one, but
yeah,
they all got cut out, and now
Michael Sartori, back from his 10-year anniversary, will be with us shortly. Michael sent me a message because he was with his wife, and he sent me a message and said, "I'm near Canada. We should hang out." Okay. I get this message and I said, "When and where?" And he says that he's in Washington. And like as in West Coast. Okay.
Yeah, the other side.
And he does not realize. I was just like, he's like, "I'm near Vancouver." And I'm like, no, because Vancouver is to where I live, at like California to New York.
Yeah, you're East Coaster.
Yeah, like I'm 2 hours from Buffalo, something like that. Like I'm a whiles away. And he said, "Yeah, sorry about that." I'm like, it's not your fault. There's only 3 places in Canada. So, and he responded, "There's 3?" Oh, touche.
I know, because most of the country is like right on the southern border, or like the where people live part.
Yeah, we're all right against the U.S., but it's a very long country. So we're California to New York. It's just we're just along the border.
Right.
Anyway, let's get into the passage. I was very excited to talk to you about this because you were remembering that last time that we talked, where anything bad about last time we talked has been edited out. But oh boy, the last time that we spoke, we talked about how Saul actually was made king 3 times. And I realized that we might, if we are so lucky, get through 3 chapters today, because he also gets rejected 3 times. And the first time is related to the sacrifice. Remember, that's how he meets as Samuel is going up to make the sacrifice, and they say they have to wait for him. Then the second story is a casting of lots. And then the third story was related to Nahash, who Yoav was right. The Ammonites are not a giant clan. So I said they might be serpent seed because they're giant clan. That is not the case. But Nahash still hints at this serpent connection. And there will be 3 rejection stories, the third of which has a serpent connection. So let's get into it. Unless you've had any reflections since we last spoke.
Oh no.
No?
No, I've been having the headaches and stuff like that, so I've been sleeping most of the time.
It's been a lot of napping. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Very sorry. Okay, go ahead, if you would be so good.
All right. Saul lived for 1 year and then became king, and when he had reigned for 2 years over Israel, Saul chose 3,000 men of Israel. 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash and the hill country of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. The rest of the people he sent home, every man to his tent. Jonathan defeated the garrison of the Philistines that was at Geba, and the Philistines heard of it. And Saul blew the trumpet throughout all the land, saying, "Let the Hebrews hear." And all Israel heard it said that Saul had defeated the garrison of the Philistines, and also that Israel had become a stench to the Philistines. And the people were called out to join Saul at Gilgal.
Okay, so it's going well. Everything is going right. The last situation that we had, everything was going right for Saul there too. So everything's going right. This is perfect. You need things to be going right so that, it's a high precipice so that the fall is more dramatic. Continue.
And the Philistines mustered to fight with Israel 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen and troops like the sand on the seashore in multitude. They came up and encamped in Michmash to the east of Beth-aven. When the men of Israel saw that they were in trouble, for the people were hard pressed, the people hid themselves in caves and in holes and in rocks and in tombs and in cisterns. And some Hebrews crossed the fords of the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul was still at Gilgal, and all the people followed him trembling.
Wonderful. Wonderful story. Okay, so it's really setting it up as a lot of tension. I don't know if you can hear it, Cassandra, but I hear the dramatic music swelling, getting louder, and like da 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 da, that kind of thing. I don't know what that is. You know what I mean, though?
Right?
Like,
Yes. Yeah.
like, why are you including this little bit of how the people followed him trembling? Yeah. Like, this is for drama.
Yeah, I could see that. You see like all the men moving and people scared and they're scurrying around. Yeah. See it all.
Yes. Boom. Michael has now joined us.
No.
David, I was trolling you. I know my geography.
I was Cassandra, did you feel that when Michael made that comment that he was referring to something else? I hope you weren't part of the stream at that moment.
Oh, yeah.
No, okay. Yeah, I assumed you did. You knew. That's all right. Happy anniversary, Michael. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
That's such good news. So you said 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. We got married the same year. Cool. I just celebrated my 10th.
Congratulations.
Yes, it's good. It's good. I'm a very big fan of marriage. One of the things I always tell people is that never mind. Let's not get into that. Okay, I'll tell everyone another time because I always tell people. I just said that. Cassandra, continue so that Michael can eat his lunch.
Okay. He waited 7 days, the time appointed by Samuel. But Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattering from him. So Saul said, "Bring the burnt offering here to me, and the peace offerings." And he offered the burnt offering. As soon as he had finished offering the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came, and Saul went out to meet him and greet him. Samuel said, "What have you done?" And Saul said, "When I saw that the people were scattering from me and that you did not come within the days appointed, and that the Philistines had mustered at Michmash, I said, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the favor of the Lord. So I forced myself and offered the burnt offering."
Oh, Paul, pause there. I like it. What are you laughing at? Tell me what
I
you're
forced
laughing at. 'Cause
myself.
that's,
I did this. This is a sacrifice for me to do this.
it was so, you guys, you don't know how hard it was for me to do this incredibly selfish thing. You don't realize how difficult it was for me to be that selfish.
That's boomerality. That's one of the things that that is.
Like-
That's one of the definitions. All work is sacrifice, and when the leader does it, leaders are always taking the sacrifice of being in charge for your sake. They did the hard work so you didn't have to.
Right.
Saul's the original boomer.
That's an excellent way of talking about it. That's great. It's great.
Oh my goodness.
Man,
Yeah.
Michael has become, he's got his one issue that he's going to bring forward until the election's over, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so things are going
Yeah.
man. Now, I think it's so important because, Cassandra, we talked before about how when he's introduced to Samuel, the people tell him they have to wait for him to come. So he has no excuse. And he's wording this as though he had, like, this was, I know this was an act of disobedience, but really it was an act of obedience. Because
Yes.
look at how he worded it. I realized now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the favor of the Lord. So I was seeking God's favor, right? I was doing the godly thing. So I forced myself and offered the burnt offering.
Right. Yeah. I did this for everyone else, is what he's saying.
It's not for me, guys. It just so happens, right? This is an interesting thing too, because there's a bit of this with it spoke of positively that George Washington says, "Oh, I didn't want to be president. Everyone made me have to be president. It was forced upon me. So I had to do it." Like, it's kind of a, now in that case, there's like I think that there may have really been a humility, but here it's a false humility. It's really a not taking responsibility. This I find interesting. As soon as he had finished offering the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came.
Great timing.
Right? Like, where does he, like, I can picture it as a movie, but in an actual situation where you can see far into the horizon. What do you mean?
Yeah. Now he's here. Yeah, I mean, I guess he was afraid that everything would just collapse in on itself if he didn't do this. Or maybe he wanted to be the hero again.
Yeah. It is definitely setting it up as though the odds are against him, right? That the people are trembling, they're hiding in holes, and they refuse to refer to the horsemen and troops like the sand of the seashore in multitude, right? Which is a description made of how prosperous Israel will become. But it's saying it's like it's an impossible amount to count.
Right.
Is what we're kind of getting at, right? So impossible to count. That's how many were there. Look, Jason, you make very good points. You're very intelligent, and no one's going to make your points for you. You have to come on here. We're not going to, I have not tied it to Joshua. I don't even know what you're talking about.
No proxies.
Yeah, no proxies.
You have to come in person.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that? Michael is back from his infuriating phone call where I saw many an eye roll.
No eye rolls. So this is a hyperbole. Is that what we're saying here? There wasn't an uncountable number of troops.
Yes, sometimes the text uses hyperbole. No, my point was it's a very tense situation. The text increases the intensity, but then he just says, "Yeah, it was scary. I needed God's favor, so I forced myself to do it."
Right. He forced God's favor.
Yeah. Yeah. Which we also know as playing God, right? Like he's going to take a role that's not his to try to make it so that God is on his side.
Yeah. Again, I should rewatch that thing that Neil did because he was talking about the domains of like the king versus the priest versus the prophet. You can't overlap those too much.
Yeah. And what the level is of overlap, I don't know, because there are things that David does that overlaps, but the text speaks favorably of David when he does it. And I actually really don't know what to do with that. Because there's also bread that only the priests are supposed to eat. And David eats that. And the text is like, yeah, that was fine. It's totally cool.
Well, it definitely seems like there's, I mean, I think when you put everything together, like the idea that like obedience of rules in a scrupulous manner is never as important as obeying the reasons why those rules are there or what they're supposed to convey. Which isn't to say like, so like, cause it's like something where it's like Saul could say like, oh, well, yeah, I was trying to do the right thing by breaking the rules, but his intentions were not, it was not broken in a way that shows understanding of the reasons why God was saying those things anyway. I mean, my I don't know if do I mean I don't know, yeah, because I always thought, or not always, at some point I thought this was kind of like an Abraham situation, like a test for Saul. Like what he should have done is he should have argued with God about having to kill everybody, and he's just like, yeah, I'll go kill, and then he just doesn't do a complete job with that, but he never questions it. Because that's like that's one of those things where people talk about like how can God command this awful thing, but when he told Abraham about destroying Sodom and Gomorrah, he was open to adjusting his plans. Saul doesn't even try. So
yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and there is a sense of what the person's heart, why in their heart they are doing things. That will become important, of the distinction between Saul and David, that God is seeking after a man who's after his own heart. Because there is an action which is done and you have deniability. But then you can say, you could say instead of, no, I think I said everything within that is just like, through your heart, you can have a conversation with two people that have done the same action, and one is culpable and one is not culpable. The text is able to be that complex. Let's continue. Michael, will you read for us now that your sandwich is out of mouth?
Okay. Where? 11?
Samuel said.
Okay, Samuel said, "What have you done?" And Saul said, "When I saw that the people were scattering from me, and that you did not come within the days appointed, and that the Philistines had mustered at Michmash, I said, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the favor of the Lord. So I forced myself and offered the burnt offering. And Samuel said to Saul, "You have done foolishly. You have not kept the command of the Lord your God with which he commanded you. For then the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart, and the Lord has commanded him to be prince over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you."
Okay, that's a great place. That's a great place to take a little pause. So,
Now, the same was this, what chapter are we in?
1 Samuel chapter 13.
13. Okay. And did he already anoint David, or is that
No, David has
that's
not been
next?
anointed
Okay.
yet. This is the first time that that language is used within the text,
Okay.
that a man after his own heart, that he's going to seek one. See, this is exactly what we were talking about before, Michael, and why some people are like, how does this timeline work? Because he's not made king once. Saul is made king 3 times. And when you talk to people and they talk about Saul losing the kingship, they'll talk about one of the stories. But for me, it's that old thing that you've heard, that twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a pattern. When you're given something multiple times, it's letting you know that he surely was chosen king, but he surely has made enough mistakes that he should be rejected. He ought to be rejected. He will make that many mistakes.
I was looking at some of these passages for some of my other studying and looking at the pattern, and it does seem to be like, I think you can make a case probably for a lot of, not just for Saul, but like for David as well. There is like 3 things. Like there's God choosing, like, which is, he, or even like if you look at Jacob and Esau, it's like he chooses Jacob first. Then there's something where it's like the anointing, or you could say for Jacob maybe the blessing that he receives from his father that he steals from Esau. And then there's like the kind of coronation when he's like he's actually in the place. So that kind of does seem to be like a pattern,
Right.
of how things go.
Right. Right. And you want it to be complete and like definite, right? A first date doesn't mean anything. Right? Like that might just be because they're being nice. Cassandra, do you have anything you want to add in there?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So we talked about this before, the book of the law that would have been given to him for his study. So you have not kept the command of the Lord your God with which he commanded you. Well, she's back. For then the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not continue. This is something I find absolutely fascinating because the kingship can switch. It can switch families, apparently, but then after David, it can't switch families no matter how much that guy messes up. And I'm not sure what the distinction is. And the first time that I realized that David does a lot of the Saul stuff, I was almost like infuriated. I was like, why does David get a pass? Why does David get a pass?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I don't know if it's as exact as close, but it's interesting because so I just did a whole lot of looking into Jacob and Esau, and like Esau really, like, he's a little foolish. Like losing his birthright is foolish, but he does like everything right. That every time he has the opportunity to do something, he actually does the right thing. And Jacob like fights against doing the right thing in almost every instance. And I mean, I think it's part of the showing the fact that it's not like, there's a certain element of our nature that is just like our created quality, like of being a good person or a bad person, and that's not really what God's so concerned about. Um, you can be a bad person and He can use you quite well,
Yeah.
but it is kind of hard to make sense of the why, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a bit of Cain and Abel, because maybe it's not so obvious what the problem was to them. He just says, like, why are you downcast? If you fix yourself, if you right yourself, everything will be better again. So there's something like that where it does seem like it's kind of vague or something, but I don't know.
Yeah. And I think with that one, which is similar to Jacob and Esau, I think like what Esau kind of figures out is Esau is really mad about like not being the chosen one, but then he's just like, I can just have a good life and I can serve God in my own way. And that's what God was putting on the table for Cain. Like, don't worry about it. I chose your brother. Just have a life. And he got really upset about that. And that was like the point of contention. So
Yeah.
like, cause it's.
But okay, so this is happening right now in the chat where people are saying maybe showing the struggle is part of the point, where I do have a lot of like, Saul is the best a man can be kind of a thing. And I feel this way about Esau as well. He makes a couple of mistakes, but you're like, but the text also jumps in to take away a little bit of your sympathy, right? Where it's just like it lines stuff up as like, well, it was a bit selfish, or Esau despised his birthright. It takes a little bit of your sympathy away, when at the base level there's a lot of sympathy you can understand. And this guy's he's in a bit of a panic. It's like, what was he supposed to do? Just go to battle without seeking God? So he does the thing himself, right? It seems understandable, but it's still crossing a boundary.
Yeah. Well, and it does have the sense of like, how people be like, why is everything going wrong? And then they'll say like, oh, it's because we forgot to do this thing. But when they're thinking about that thing, they're not really examining the fact of like, we were doing it in the wrong attitude. They're approaching it from like a superstitious level. Like that's like where he's coming from. Like, oh no, I didn't do the superstitious ritual, so that's why it's not gonna work out good or whatever. It's like, if you don't pray for your food before you eat, you're gonna get food poisoning or something. Like the ritual is not as important as like being grateful for where food comes from.
Yeah.
There's also that thing he says where Saul is saying that he did it because Samuel didn't get there on time.
Yeah.
This is not my fault. Subtle. This is your fault.
Yeah.
When you really think about it.
It does sound like he's pushing the blame like from Adam to Eve. It's like he's kind of subtly saying, well, you messed up first and then I had to fix it or something.
Let me check something. That is a very good point.
Do we have, I don't know, is it say at whatever point, like where that Samuel said he was going to be at this place at a certain time or anything like that? I don't remember. You get to look at the previous chapter closely, but.
Yeah, I don't remember. Saul just says you weren't here within the appointed time. So I guess there was a certain schedule they were working with.
Is that Saul's appointed time? Like, is he the one making the timeline or something?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I was searching for something else while you guys were talking. So, guys, this chat, it's going so well. I like when people are actually talking about elements of the text and not debating internet conspiracies. So great job, everyone. Okay, let's continue on. Where were we?
I think we
And
finished
yeah, I think
15. Okay.
yeah. Let's go from 15. Go ahead, Sandra. Cassandra. What I called you?
And Samuel arose and went up from Gilgal. The rest of the people went up after Saul to meet the army. They went up from Gilgal to Gibeah of Benjamin. And Saul numbered the people who were present with him, about 600 men. And Saul and Jonathan his son and the people who were present with them stayed in Gibeah of Benjamin. But the Philistines encamped in Michmash, and raiders came out of the camp of the Philistines in 3 companies. One company turned toward Ophrah, to the land of Shual. Another company turned toward Beth Horon, and another company turned toward the border that looks down on the valley of Zeboim, toward the wilderness. Now there was no blacksmith to be found throughout all the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make themselves swords or spears. But every one of the Israelites went down to the Philistines to sharpen his plowshare, his mattock, his axe, or his sickle. And the charge was 2/3 of a shekel for the plowshares, and for the mattocks, and 1/3 of a shekel for sharpening the axes and for setting the goads.
Okay,
So
let's pause 1 second to get into detail about this. Some people have noted this, that, and I think I did when we were talking about Judges, that there's weapons, actual weapons used are very exceptional. And it doesn't say why until here, where it specifically says that the Philistines won't let them have their own blacksmiths. Because, and this was very common, that a good blacksmith could in very little time switch a pruning, like a pruning hook into a spear. Took very little effort to change those things, which is why there's a prophecy about people beating their spears into pruning instruments and all this other stuff, is because people used to do the opposite. It's wartime, quick, change all these farming implements to now be weapons of war, right? So what we can see here is they're in control of all this stuff. They won't allow Israel in order to have their own weapons, which is why Michael lives in Texas, so that he can own as many guns as he has daughters, which, if you're counting, is a bunch. It's a bunch of guns, guys.
well, yeah, one for each
It's only
daughter.
3. It's only 3. It's not that many.
Look, I said in my news report, Michael, most people have lost track of how many daughters he has. I said it. I was like, is it 3? Is it 4? Might even be 5. I don't know. I can't remember.
How old are they?
6.5, 4.5, 1.5.
Wow. And they got guns already. That's pretty cool.
No, they don't actually.
I went to a church and there was the one pastor had 4 daughters, and they weren't the same age, but they looked like they were quadruplets. And I could never remember how many there were. I'm like, is there 4 or is there like 2 and they're really fast? Didn't I just see them? Yeah, you always just see them.
Or did they all wear matching dresses?
It was very similar style, not matching dresses. Wasn't that bad.
It wasn't like that, like the Duggars or whatever, where they're all like literally from the same fabric.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But okay, let's continue on where we're at, because it's connected to what we were just talking about. To finish the chapter, go ahead, Cassandra.
So on the day of the battle, there was neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any people with Saul and Jonathan. But Saul and Jonathan, his son, had them. And the garrison of the Philistines went out to the pass of Michmash.
Yeah, so the king is the only one with the sword. And his son, right? He puts himself in a position, and I don't know how we're supposed to look at that. But these guys, you could look at it positively. Like, this is the best man. He gets the best equipment. But there's something to this in the David story, that when he goes up against the giant, he says, I haven't tried these. So he goes without the proper implements, which exaggerates how great David's victory is, which is very, very similar to the Gideon story, where the men also divide into 3 groups and also don't go in with weapons, right? Remember, they have the jars which they break, and the trumpets and the fires, and so like it causes this panic, and the enemy defeats themselves. They panic in the middle of the night. They start fighting each other. That's the kind of thing that kind of goes down, right? So what that kind of those images that are being played with. But is it positive or negative that he and Jonathan are the only ones with a sword? I tend to think that it's negative. This is funny. No use
positive.
in giving. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you can say it's positive that they have a sword, but it's definitely negative that they're the only ones.
Right.
Like,
yeah. I mean, maybe if they were leading them, it's another story if they put all of the other men in front and then Saul comes up behind.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's I am harping on this. This is part of my interpretation when you know all the stories, is that Saul does make exception for himself and for Jonathan. And that gets into the second reason why the kingdom is taken away, which is what we're getting to now. Michael, are you driving?
It's interesting because I think
Go ahead.
I cannot read, but I was just thinking it's interesting that in saving the king of the Amalekites or whatever, that seems like he's making an exception like for himself, because he sees kings or like kinghood as this sort of special qualifier of humanity. Like, because you can imagine in saying like, if he broke if there was a way to break the rules, like if he was going to say like there were young women or whatever that like that would have been.
Oh, we may have lost Michael.
Easily seen like God give grace to his disobedience.
And then he's lost completely. What I will say about that, without his ability to respond, there's no ability to respond. So this is going to be such a brutal takedown. He's back. What I was going to say is that yes, but David also spares a condemned king, Saul. He repeatedly does that. But again, the text doesn't look down on him for not killing Saul. It is really positive about the fact that he spares Saul. So it's again, Saul is doing all this the wrong way, but somehow David is doing it the right way. And sometimes that infuriates me, and that's fine. That's my cross to bear. I have to deal with that.
Yeah. Well, I guess it makes sense why Saul wanted to kill him so bad. It must have driven him crazy.
A very good point. Saul isn't an Amalekite. Yeah, but he does get possessed by evil spirits. Anyway, okay, let's continue on. Cassandra, would you read for us?
One day, Jonathan, the son of Saul, said to the young man who carried his armor, "Come, let us go over to the Philistine garrison on the other side." But he did not tell his father. Saul was staying in the outskirts of Gibeah in the pomegranate cave at Migron. The people who were with him were about 600 men, including Ahijah, the son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, son of Phinehas, son of Eli, the priest of the Lord in Shiloh, wearing an ephod. And the people did not know that Jonathan had gone. Within the passes by which Jonathan sought to go over to the Philistine garrison, there was a rocky crag on the one side and a rocky crag on the other side. The name of the one was Bozez, the name of the other was Seneh. The one crag rose on the north in front of Michmash, and the other on the south in front of Geba.
Great job.
Okay.
Great job. I would like to continue going because yeah. Here, I'll read. I never read. Michael, I just have you on mute because there's a lot of sound. He's a good guy, but he's just driving in the car. Jonathan said to the young man who carried his armor, "Come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for nothing can hinder the Lord from saving by many or by few." And his armor bearer said to him, "Do all that is in your heart. Do as you wish. Behold, I am with you, heart and soul." Then Jonathan said, "Behold, we will cross over to the men, and we will show ourselves to them. And if they say to us, 'Wait until we come to you,' then we will stand still in our place, and we will not go up to them. But if they say, 'Come up to us,' then we will go up, for the Lord has given them into our hands, and this shall be the sign to us." So both of them showed themselves to the garrison of the Philistines, and the Philistines said, "Look, Hebrews are coming out of the holes where they have hidden themselves." And the men of the garrison hailed Jonathan and his armor bearer and said, "Come up to us, and we will show you a thing." And Jonathan said to his armor bearer, "Come up after me, for the Lord has given them into the hand of Israel." Then Jonathan climbed up to his hands and feet, and his armor bearer after him, and they fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer killed them after him. And that first strike, which Jonathan his armor bearer made, killed about 20 men within as if it were half a furrow's length in an acre of land. And there was a panic in the camp, in the field, and among all the people. The garrison and even the raiders trembled, the earth quaked, and it became a very great panic. What do you guys think?
It's interesting that Jonathan has this kind of David-like faith, not realizing this is before, because this is before we've seen David, right? So,
Yes.
So yeah, sad that his dad is such a turd.
Good. Cassandra, anything noticed there for yourself?
Well, I was just thinking that it does seem like Saul's kingship seems like maybe, I don't know if insecure is the word. Like there is something where he's not quite solidly a king almost in his own estimation. Whereas, yeah, like you're saying, Jonathan, like King David he's courageous.
Right.
He goes for it. He's a warrior. And there's something, I don't know, more unsure about Saul's kingship.
Yeah. And there is, like, I think we see it here, and I think this is for the sake of contrast. He's putting himself in situations that would be, it should be impossible, but he trusts that God will give him a sign. God is responsible for that sign. He takes it and goes by faith. He acts on it, right? So there's these good actions to kind of show what a king could be like, how they could act, how they could interact with things, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what makes Saul king that second time when he saves everybody.
Yeah. So this is great. This is great because this is related. Well, okay, here, we'll get there. You're going to see it soon. And you'll go, "Oh yeah, that's a good point." Could you read?
And the watchmen of Saul in Gibeah of Benjamin looked, and behold, the multitude was dispersing here and there. Then Saul said to the people who were with him, "Count and see who has gone from us." And when they had counted, behold, Jonathan and his armor bearer were not there. So Saul said to Ahijah, "Bring the ark of God here." for the ark of God went at that time with the people of Israel. Now, while Saul was talking to the priests, the tumult in the camp of the Philistines increased more and more. So Saul said to the priests, "Withdraw your hand." Then Saul and all the people who were with him rallied and went into the battle. And behold, every Philistine's sword was against his fellow, and there was very great confusion.
Okay, this is going good. This is going real good. So as this battle is coming by, it's you can see there's this chaos like erupting. There's the bringing of the Ark of the Covenant, which I think is supposed to call back to when Hophni and Phinehas bring out the Ark of the Covenant in the middle of a battle and stuff. Like there's a bunch of sketch and a bunch of chaos and all this stuff that we've encountered before. So there's just a lot here. I think it's very, very interesting. But let's continue. Let's continue if we can, unless you guys feel we're going too fast. No? Well, then Cassandra, read on.
Then Saul and all the people who were with him rallied and went into battle, and behold, every Philistine sword was against his fellow, and there was a very great confusion. Now the Hebrews who had been with the Philistines before that time, and who had gone up with them into the camp, even they also turned to be with the Israelites who were with Saul and Jonathan. Likewise, when all the men of Israel who had hidden themselves in the hill country of Ephraim heard that the Philistines were fleeing, they too followed hard after them in the battle. So the Lord saved Israel that day, and the battle passed beyond Beth Aven.
Okay, so it's going really well for them. This is also, so I was going to mention that this is also taking place in the same area Saul went to find the donkeys in. So this image that Saul is witnessing the people disperse, remember, as king, he's this guy who is gathering the wild donkeys together, right? And so the image that the people are starting to disperse is, I think, supposed to be a callback to this. This is a hint of the fact that symbolically he's losing his grasp on the kingship. Even though at the end of this bit of the story, I think because of Jonathan's actions, things are actually going well. Yeah. Let us continue, because it's the vow that I want to talk about. Just so excited to talk about this vow, guys.
And the men of Israel had been hard pressed that day, so Saul had laid an oath on the people, saying, "Cursed be the man who eats food until it is evening, and I am avenged on my enemies." So none of the people had tasted food. Now when all the people came to the forest, behold, there was honey on the ground. And when the people entered the forest, behold, the honey was dropping. But no one put his hand to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. But Jonathan had not heard his father charge the people with the oath. So he put out the tip of the staff that was in his hand and dipped it in the honeycomb and put his hand to his mouth, and his eyes became bright. Then one of the people said, "Your father strictly charged the people with an oath, saying, 'Cursed be the man who eats food this day.' And the people were faint." Then Jonathan said, "My father has troubled the land. See how my eyes have become bright because they tasted a little of this honey. How much better if the people had eaten freely today of the spoil of their enemies that they found. For now the defeat among the Philistines has not been great."
Yeah, this
Ooh.
is, man. Yeah. You have these traditions where in some cases people are supposed to fast one way or another when they're in battle, to like increase something. But there's also, look, you need your Gatorade, right? He gets a couple of electrolytes and he springs right back up. And I don't know, it sounds to me, this harsh vow that he's making is the same thing as when Jephthah does that. When why do you make this? What is the point of this vow? Like what how does this function? How
Right.
are you not almost invoking magical practices? And your vow is not something that you're vowing for other people. You're putting these harsh restrictions on other people.
Right. I was thinking, like what you're saying, he's supposed to keep the people together. It seems like maybe he's trying to do it in a really harsh way through this oath, right? Like make them bind together around something and do something together, but it's not the right call for the situation. He's being too harsh, I think, maybe to assert that he is king almost. Like some people have that false kind of dominant personality to try to make up for the fact that they don't feel secure in their position.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the honey on the thing also just made me think of like when God was giving food to the Israelites in the desert, briefly.
Yeah, because it seems like like it drips on it kind of presents itself to him.
It's a
Not like
land
he's searching.
dripping with milk and honey. I mean, that's the land that they're in. It's supposed to be dripping with honey.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Dripping with it, guys. It's dripping with it. Yeah. Okay, let us continue. Yeah, that's where this is where we're supposed to be at, right? Did I go down? I think I did.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yes.
They struck down the Philistines that day from Michmash to Aijalon, and the people were very faint. The people pounced on the spoil and took sheep and oxen and calves and slaughtered them on the ground, and the people ate them with the blood.
Oof.
Then they told Saul, "Behold, the people are sinning against the Lord by eating with the blood." And he said, "You have dealt treacherously. Roll a great stone to me here." And Saul said, "Disperse yourselves among the people and say to them, let every man bring his ox or his sheep and slaughter them here and eat. And do not sin against the Lord by eating with the blood." So every one of the people brought his ox with him that night, and they slaughtered them there.
Okay,
And
this
Saul,
is very important. And within Judaism, the most important of the dietary laws is not to eat blood. And that is even in the Noahide covenant, and is also in the New Testament. That when they're saying, okay, what should Gentiles do in order to become part of the movement? Like, do they have to keep kosher? They say no, but they're not allowed to eat blood. Right? As far as dietary, that's like, we don't realize this, that the life of the thing is in the blood. So there's an importance of that, and you're supposed to pour it on the ground. But these people are so hungry, they're so desperate that they don't wait. And they're desperate because Saul put on them a yoke, a burden that was too much for them. So it's too difficult for them. Now they're starving. So now they're tearing into these animals, not waiting long enough, which, by the way, can also make you sick. But sick is better than dead. Yeah. And so that's the importance of that this is actually, and I think a lot of Christians don't realize this, the eating of blood is never allowed. Not through, like, even Noah knows, his kids know that that's not good and that's a sin, that it's taught in the New Testament as well, and it is in the law of Moses. Do not eat the blood. And that's also a taking everything for yourself, because the idea is that you pour it back into the earth. It's like admitting that the thing isn't fully yours.
right.
Yeah. The rabbinic principle that you cannot propagate a law that the people cannot keep. An example of this is that, generally speaking, you don't eat insects, but you're allowed to eat locusts. And some people have said, look, when swarms of grasshoppers come in, that's the only thing to eat. So God provides a kosher way of dealing with the fact that you're living in a time of famine. Like you're living under this, there is something that can be done.
Yeah, no rare steaks.
One of the most important things though is also draining the blood, right? That now everyone even cooks kosher. I talked to a friend and he's a hunter, and he said like when he gets a deer, you got to go and you got to drain it right away, and if you don't, you are going to get sick. Smaller animal maybe not so much, but if you eat like deer with that has not been drained, it's not good, guys. It's really not good.
Right.
And yet my dad has eaten like blood sausage or whatever, that English sausage that's made from blood. I can't do it. I can't do it, guys.
Yeah. Pretty extreme.
Yeah. And that's coming from a Filipina.
I did not eat a lot of that Filipino food. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
No duck eggs or anything.
Okay, I was gonna ask about the duck eggs. Had to ask about the duck eggs. Okay, 35. Go ahead.
And Saul built an altar to the Lord. It was the first altar that he built to the Lord. Then Saul said, "Let us go down after the Philistines by night and plunder them until the morning light. Let us not leave a man of them." And they said, "Do whatever seems good to you." But the priest said, "Let us draw near to God here." And Saul inquired of God, "Shall I go down after the Philistines? Will you give them into the hand of Israel?" But he did not answer him that day. And Saul said, "Come here, all you leaders of the people, and know and see how this sin has arisen today. For as the Lord lives, who saves Israel, though it be in Jonathan my son, he shall surely die."
Wow, look at how dramatically he spells it out, but also making it so that even if it's Jonathan, I'm going to be true to this. Right?
Right.
He's making it doesn't have a way out. Okay, continue.
But there was not a man among all the... Oh, I lost my place.
Yeah, no, that was right.
Oh. His guilds. There was not a man among all the people who answered him. Then he said to all Israel, "You shall be on one side, and I and Jonathan my son will be on the other side." And the people said to Saul, "Do what seems good to you." Therefore Saul said, "O Lord God of Israel, why have you not answered your servant this day? If this guilt is in me or in Jonathan my son, O Lord God of Israel, give Urim. But if this guilt is in your people Israel, give Thummim." And Jonathan and Saul were taken, but the people escaped. Then Saul said, "Cast the lot between me and my son Jonathan." And Jonathan was taken.
So, okay, what was the second story where Saul became king? Remember, the people are gathered.
Yeah.
The lot is cast. The lot is cast. The lot is cast. 3 times in a row, it narrows down to him. And here, is it the people or Saul's family? Right? So you again have this casting of the lot more than once, to show that it's like absolutely certain who the person is, where the condemnation is, and it's a condemnation that he has brought, that Saul has brought upon them. So let's continue.
Then Saul said to Jonathan, "Tell me what you have done." And Jonathan told him, "I tasted a little honey with the tip of the staff that was in my hand. Here I am." I don't know why
you left right at die. Here I am, I will, and then you just went out of existence. It was great. It was very dramatic.
And Saul said, "God do so to me and more also. You shall surely die, Jonathan." Then the people said to Saul, "Shall Jonathan die, who has worked this great salvation in Israel? Far from it. As the Lord lives, there shall not one hair of his head fall to the ground, for he has worked with God this day." So the people ransomed Jonathan so that he did not die. Then Saul went up from pursuing the Philistines, and the Philistines went to their own place. Okay.
I think I want to end there because I don't want to do the next chapter as well. I think it would be too much. I want these to be bite size. So we're gonna end mid verse, or mid chapter. I mean,
Right.
so we'll be at verse 47 next time. Do you think I might be pushing it, or what do you think about this pattern that in the rejection there's also this 3-part story and it connects them to each other? So the first one related to the sacrifice, the second one related to the lot. As far as we've gone so far, does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think it really seems that Saul is, God shows him very clearly to make points about, the nature of kings and, how they are with and without, like, his approval. And, the king is not really nothing without God. But even in, like, the way that he, first picks Saul and has him prophesy and do all these things, it's like anybody can be anyone with God. So it's really like it's all, it's just really telling people to figure out where their priorities should lie. So I think he's making a really clear case with, like, showing, Saul is not the nuanced character so much, or like, or at least you could say when Saul is operating in his own strength, it really clearly shows that he is not someone you can really hold up as a standard of, like, good character. So, but he was used by God earlier on to do things. But that just shows you, it's like, well, that was clearly God. That wasn't Saul.
Right. Even though he was the kind of guy that you would think would be a good ruler.
Yeah.
You would think that this guy is the guy you want.
Right.
And it's just not.
Right.
God actually wants someone after his own heart. And in the section of Deuteronomy, and whenever Samuel is warning, and when there's warnings about kings, the warning is that the king is going to make exceptions for himself and for his family and not for anyone else. And yes, Jonathan is popular, and the people ask, please don't kill him. Please don't do it. Right? But at the same time, I don't think he would have hesitated if it wasn't his child.
Yeah. For
And
sure.
he paints himself into the corner by saying, even if it was Jonathan, even if it's Jonathan, he's got to die.
It's kind of interesting in a way, because, like, there seems to be a clear message that Saul doesn't get. Like, because I'm a few chapters ahead in, like, my daily reading, and when you get to the part where, like, Saul is where Jonathan's, like, shooting the arrows to tell David, like, whether to stay or whether to go, and that, like, Saul is really in this whole thing of, like, you should be the king, like, to his son, and not understanding, like, no, you would, like, the throne is passed from us, like, it's not part of our family anymore. You're still occupying it, and in a similar way, it's kind of like the test that, like, Cain fails and that Esau kind of goes through, where it's like, okay, because Jacob goes away for 20 years to Laban's land, and all that time it's like, you see behind the scenes, I mean, it's really even it's right like at the time when he's being sent away that Esau
Right.
understands, okay, I've misunderstood what my parents value and what the plan is and all this stuff. So for that whole time, he's really happily stewarding what he knows is going to be his brother's inheritance. And he's building it up, and he's doing everything right to take care of the land that is not going to be his. And it's like Saul could have, and I think Jonathan understood, right, very quickly, okay, David is the next one, so I'm going to support David because that's the future. And Saul could have done that. Saul could have lived out his reign until he died of old age, or he could have decided to transition things peacefully in a good way, but he just fought against the truth that God had revealed, and I think that's the thing, because even it's like Moses not going into the land, it's like Moses doesn't then just decide, well, I'm going to destroy all these Hebrews because I don't get to go in the land. It's just
right.
yeah,
And
okay.
Moses doesn't say, well, I'm going to go in anyway. I'm going to do it anyway. Right. You said I can't. I'm going to do it. I don't care. Right.
And then even David, David, he draws up the plans for the temple, but he realizes I'm not going to be the one I don't get to build it. That's okay. He's okay with that,
Yeah. He's reserved to what his role is. This is as far as I go and no further.
There's something it always making me think of Macbeth, I guess, a bit, because he gets designs on the kingship and he can't let go of the fact that it's not his anymore. It's going to be someone else.
I think it may have been 2 years ago. I was studying both at the same time for some reason, and I became convinced that Shakespeare was using this section of scripture in that character, that he is a tragic character that you relate to, that you like, but then also has this tragic flaw where he's just not willing to allow it to be how it's supposed to be.
Right. He's not giving in to God like he should be.
Okay, we're getting demands in the chat. So first things first. Don, I'm not saying that Jonathan should be held to that vow. There's a proper way to be relieved from a vow. I think it's better not to have vowed a bad vow in the first place. My issue is, first he makes a bad vow, then he makes exception because it's his son. It would be a different thing to say, look, this was a ridiculous vow that I made that no one else should be held to. That's not what he says. Instead, it's because it's Jonathan, I'm taking it back. I'm making exception for the people, for the person the people like, and for the person that I like. That's why it's okay.
Well, it's kind
not
of like
because of principle.
Well, the introduction of... Go ahead.
Well, so that's even like at least Jephthah. Jephthah made the dumb vow, but he didn't hold back. And like with Abraham, God's like, now I know you won't hold back your only son. So it's and he steps in, and it's like, so at least Saul should have been like, okay, well, God stepped in for Abraham. If I start, going towards the motions, pull out the knife and point it at my son, hope, is God going to stop me or something, but he doesn't even he just tries to, he doesn't even try to act as if God can hold an oath seriously. It's really like a lack of faith.
Yeah, it's a great way of saying it. Thank you, Michael. Okay, look. The people intercede for the just king. Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, it's interesting that they ransomed Jonathan.
Yeah, specifically they ransomed him.
If Saul was chosen, I wonder what would have happened. He would have just had to die, I guess.
Yoav is eager to learn new insults if you have interesting ones. I do have a couple. But okay, let's go back a second. So the Urim and the Thummim. Jason has to know what Urim and Thummim is. This is a guy who pays attention to stuff. I don't know how he's asking this question. Urim and Thummim, the people debate what it is. Sometimes it's just like a black and a white stone, kind of like a way of consulting God and being able to get a heads or tails, like a yes or no kind of answer. Though in some situations it's more complex. So people are like, how do they get more complex answers? So there's all these questions about how exactly they work. And there's a bunch of theories and I don't know. But either way, it is a way, it's like a permitted form of divination. It's a permitted form of asking God's opinion on things. And what I think is interesting is God answers them. The Urim and Thummim, God actually, so Saul, whatever his amount of failure at this point is not complete. I do think he has failed twice, but we need the third failure to be his complete failure. But yeah, God is still speaking to him through these rocks somehow. Next bit, to answer in the questions. I'm eager to learn new insults if you have interesting ones. So a good one is in French. You can say someone has the wit of a staircase. The wit of a staircase is when you say something and the amount of time it takes for the person to give a comeback, they could have walked down the stairs, realized a good comment, walked back up, and then give you your response. That is the wit of a staircase. That's a good insult for you to use. At some point, Cassandra said something that Jason agreed to extremely. Do you know what that was, Cassandra?
I don't remember. I don't even remember the last thing I said. I forgot.
Dawn,
Agency.
don't you know that we have no agency?
Yeah, well, maybe that's part of the problem too. Is Saul clearly didn't. Not everybody understood what was happening with that vow.
Well, I mean, the point is like, even said Jonathan, like even if it's Jonathan, and then as soon as it was Jonathan, he's like, never mind. So he just doesn't, and the vow was about his actions, really. It was about what he was going to do. So Jonathan, it didn't matter that Jonathan broke the vow or didn't hear it. It was about Saul making a vow to God about what Saul would do if somebody ate. And then he just decided not to when it was inconvenient. So
yeah, there are people who repent for bad reasons, right? And so it doesn't count as a good reason. So it seems, he should repent of his vow. Yeah, that's true. In the same way, some people should give to charity, but some people give to charity just because they get the tax write-off.
Right. I was gonna say, because with the introduction of the king, where they went over like what it means to have a king for Israel, it also seems like there's an introduction. I don't know how it was before the king, but it seems like that you introduce more bureaucracy, and they become more political in terms of like having allyships and fighting with people and all of that stuff. All of that comes out too. And I think this idea of having rules that not everybody is treated equally under also comes under with like these bigger bureaucracy.
Right. And we've all heard about this through celebrities, right? There's like what's his name? I can't remember his name. In the 80s, this one guy who's like he was a Ferris Bueller. Who's that actor?
Matthew Broderick.
Killed someone in a hit and run with his car.
Oh yeah.
And he wasn't charged anything. It was just like, he did his public statement. He was super sad about it. We all move on, right? If Michael Sartori did that with a boomer, people would not be so forgiving.
Boomer Slayer. Yeah.
Boomer Slayer is great.
It's gonna get me in trouble at some point. I know it.
I saw you on a stream after that, and someone made mention of it, and they said, and cannibalism too. He was also accused of cannibalism. Just Michael, please, not with the blood still in it.
Yeah. Be lawful while you're cannibalizing.
Please. Yeah, again, people are making very good points. Yes, it's a bad vow. No, he shouldn't follow through with the vow.
I mean,
I
he could
agree.
just say, because he could just say, like, I made a vow, and if God wants to punish me for it, he can, if I'm going to break this vow, and God can punish me if he wants to. Like, he could have just said that. And then, like, if he doesn't get struck by lightning, everybody would have said, yeah, God agrees. That was a dumb thing you did. Ha, ha, ha. Let's move on.
That's true. That would have been a good thing for him to take responsibility of it, because he forced this on everyone.
Yeah.
Of something that they couldn't keep.
Yeah.
You can always say that God can strike me with lightning if I'm wrong about this, if you want to.
Well, I think you're not supposed to even make oaths like that. Ideally, you have to be careful.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also interesting with the second story in him being made king. I think emphasizes the fact that he's a head taller. So it's like exceptional in a good way. Like the lot falls on him multiple times, but then exceptional in a bad way too. Thank you. Quick wit, David, not of the staircase. It's not just that he's impulsive. He follows, and we're not going to get there because I'd like to end in the next 7 minutes, basically. But he also follows the people. It's whatever the people wants is what he does.
Yeah. Except for when they want David.
Oh, that's a good point. There's exceptions for that situation too, because it really is exceptions only when it's positive to him.
Yeah, that's why I said, like, the thing about him, making the exception for the king there. What's his name? It's like he's wanting to believe that there is some sort of like the distinction between royalty and the peasant class is like this ontological reality of your or something. So like he's somehow got, even though he's hiding in the baggage and all this stuff, like he's somehow gotten it into his head that like there's something unique and special about him, which is like his whole story is to more or less show there's nothing unique and special about you, but he believes that there is for some reason.
Maybe he's a millennial because he's so unique. He wants to be unique and special.
Yeah.
I had good intentions. I promise. I had good intentions.
Because I always think about what's his face? That guy at the office that character nobody liked in The Office. I can't think of his name.
Toby?
No, he was the writer, but he played that character that.
Ryan.
Yeah, because he was like the millennial of the show, and he was like kind of awful like that too.
Yeah.
Like really impulsive, didn't take responsibility.
Yeah.
All of the stereotypes.
Yeah. And we will see that more and more as we get into, and his character. I think the thing that really infuriates me about Saul is that he will repent again and turn back again. It's just like he's so close and then he moves away. Ryan is a baller. Guys, please.
Well, what? He got that big fancy job and then he screwed it all up? Sounds familiar.
He was definitely doing cocaine as well, right?
I mean, he was given what? He was given all the privileges or whatever, and then he messed it all up. And then he ended up back where he was. Familiar story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll have to read Macbeth again because it does make me think of that, but I haven't read that play in a really long time.
And it's
I kept thinking of it.
the forcing, because he goes back to the witches when he feels everything coming away from him. That's when the witches give the 3 signs with the cauldron, right? Oh no, sorry, I think that's a different. No, is that the same one? I think that's the same scene. He goes to them asking for the sign and a way of knowing that his kingdom will be secure. And he sees the head and the baby and then the line of kings. When that happens, he is trying to force the sign, and I see that connected to the Witch of Endor, as like Saul going to this thing that he was supposed to get rid of and saying, "Tell me I'm good. Tell me it still works out all right for me." Okay, guys, is there anything you guys want to say in last? Oh, Yoav is going to come in, tell us why we're all wrong, and tell us all kinds of things. Yoav, good to see you.
Hi everybody. I hate to interrupt the flow, but there was discussion in the comments, the chat, about the Urim and Tumim, and it just intrigues me. The subject just professionally it intrigues me, and somebody hinted that it has to do with some object and with the white and black, some kind of dice that you throw that can be either white or black. And I know it must be some kind of a precious stone. This is my memory of what this object might be. And there comes the bit that I know. I'm a color expert. What is the color of a polished, precious black stone? That was a question.
Black.
A polished,
Shiny.
black gemstone. What is the color of the stone?
Well, I guess it would reflect white, right? It looks
exactly. It can be black. It can be white. It depends how you saw it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it falls this way, it will be black. If it falls another way, it will be white. Depends how it catches the light. So that is it's a guess that I'm throwing out. Now, if that is true, I'm intrigued by the linguistics of it, because then Urim and Tumim should be in Hebrew something that like white and black. If I am at all on the right track. Right. Okay, Urim is or. I can see how Urim will be white. But it's not just white, it's shiny. It's active light. It's like the light coming out of a monitor. It's not reflective white. Okay, so it's shining light. Urim. Now, why would Tumim be black?
That's interesting, because I've heard people say that some people actually thought that they would have given off light, like but not just like a reflective, like a mirror, but that they actually glowed. There's all kinds of random. Okay, continue. Sorry, Yoav.
I'm a color engineer. Yeah. I will not dwell on explanation like a stone that is glowing. I will just not dwell on it. I've said, but a polished gemstone that it is reflecting the light, if thrown the right way, this is something I can explain. I can play with. It's something that I can comment intelligently on. Okay, now why would Tumim be black? And I think it's just that the word for black in many languages is just unstable. Like Lavan, white, in Hebrew, it always has been there. Right. It's a very ancient word, but the word for black has been changing constantly. Like in English, the word is black. And what is blanche in French?
White.
White.
It's yes.
So it
yeah.
is not stable. The linguistics of the word is not stable for black. It comes, if you go back to Old Germanic, it comes from ashes.
Yeah.
Ashes, if you look at them one way, they will be black. If you look at them another way, they can be actually be white.
Right.
So I think, to me, it has to do with what remains in the fire after the light. I mean, the negation of the light is what is left, which in some occasion can be called black or can be considered black. So this is my comment about Urim and Tumim. It's just somebody was nagging us on the chat, so I had to comment whatever I know about it. Another comment is about the sword. If you looked at any Labani, yes, related to me, it is.
Yeah.
Lebanon.
Yogurt, right?
Yeah, Laban is sour cheese. Lebanon is the land of the White Mountains.
Oh, okay.
So white is settled in Semitic language. Black isn't. Okay, going to swords. If you look at any depiction of ancient armies, you don't find swords anywhere. I mean, nobody was at that period would fighting with swords. They would all be fighting with spears. You might have a short sword or a dagger just to finish up the job, but not something that you actually fight with.
Right.
Until the Roman period, I think. I don't know how the Philistines were fighting. Maybe the Philistines were fighting with very cheap swords, but that is something I don't know. Now, the use of the sword was mainly ceremonial. This is why you have it in the hand of the king, and King Saul does use his sword in a ceremonial way in the next chapter. But it wasn't something that one usually fights with.
Which it continues, right? Where swords continue to have, even within cultures where we have guns, people will have swords for ceremonial purposes, right? And I think the surrender of the Civil War, it was the one general came and presented his sword. Like that is, it's like you said, ceremonial, sign of authority, all that stuff. But they do use swords. David takes the sword of Goliath as a weapon.
Yeah, but nobody. They carry they carry the short sword with them, more like a large dagger, just to finish up the job. I mean, you have your spear. What happens if you get close and personal and the spear doesn't work anymore?
Right.
Well, it's interesting because from the biblical story, the first appearance of a sword is in Genesis 3 with the angels and the flaming sword in the garden. So that's almost even like it's a divine sort of a divinely invented thing. It's not like
I love the look on Yoav's face, because this means he has thought about this a lot, and I'm looking forward to whatever he's just about to say.
I'm going to knock you off. It's the first time you have ever heard of this interpretation to the story of the Garden of Eden. You absolutely never heard it before.
Wonderful.
The phrase is Lahav acherev hamitapechet. Okay, that's the phrase. Lahav is translated something that is glowing, is burning. Cherev is translated as sword, and mitapechet is sort of turning around. Now, why would the sword be turning around? It's not a, why would be a rotating burning sword? I read it completely different. I read cherev as something dry, like the people of Israel passed through the Dead Sea Bacharava, in the dryness, or Mount Chorev. It's dryness. And Lahat is something that is hot, unbearably hot. So it's an unbearably hot desert. And what is this about mitapechet? What has changed? That is climate change. Now, am I talking absolute nonsense? Was there any severe climate change that got the land very unbearably dry and forced the people out of the garden into the harsh reality at the time when this story was started to talk from father to son? Yes, there was.
So it's because I've heard this before, that there's the river that dries up. So you would say that it's essentially drought that pushes it. That's the judgment. That's what pushes them
It's
on.
not only one river. If it was only one river that dried out, then people will not be telling this story from father to son for generations. It's what everything got. When everything got dry out, that you just were forced to just leave, just go away. You cannot stay in the garden anymore.
So but this drought, that the sword is of drought, would it still be a saying sword? And you're saying it's spreading. It's like
cherev,
spreading.
The word is cherev. There's no sword in there. It's dryness.
Okay.
It's what keeps you coming back to the Garden of Eden is not a sword. It's an unbearably hot desert caused by some climate change, because that's what happened at the time. I'm not saying that the garden exists at the moment, but certainly you cannot go back. Okay, I'm talking too much nonsense for one evening. Thank you very much for your
Thank you, Yoav. That was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming up. All right, this is the one thing that I think is very important. If you had Urim and Thummim and you placed them into a hat, they could not help you translate Egyptian that's in a cupboard somewhere. Okay, it's very important for people to know. We will be coming back to Urim and Thummim at some point, because David gets like phrases out of it, and I don't know how you get that from black and white. How do you get from flipping a coin to being able to actually get sentences? Because some of the stuff is a little bit more complex than that, but very, very interesting. And he's not speaking nonsense. A lot of his stuff is backed up by a lot of people's thoughts on scholarship and what a lot of things are hinting at. But yeah, we'll get there eventually. Guys, I had a lovely time. I had a really, really good time. Much better time than last time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we kept it locked down this time.
I think I'm actually going to have a conversation with Jacob about that phenomenon and the phenomenon of trolling, because that was fascinating. It was.
I got to go back and watch that one. I just popped in to say hi.
It's edited out, but I actually
censored. He's censored.
I don't jump to this a lot. I actually, in this particular case, I think it was demonic, because we were talking a lot about the serpent, and right before that started happening, Sandy, we used a metaphor related to when you're allowed and when you're not allowed, and how that changes how an action is perceived. So whether or not what Saul's doing is good or bad, because he does a lot of really good, but then he'll do things that'll be bad because he's not allowed. And we related this to sexual intimacy, and how if you're not allowed, then the same action is absolutely horrible. That's when the event happens. So it really is, I think, a kind of evil. But I'm very interested as to why it's a very male evil. It's not, there's a kind of a male evil that's occurring there, and it's me thinking back on myself, like when I was younger and when I would do stupid things, right? Like mooning is a male phenomenon, right? And what is that? What is the disintegration that's at the heart of that. Me and Jacob will be talking about that soon. But first, we're going to get in a big debate, I think. Jacob wants to fight me or something. It's going to be fun. Don't worry. We have much affection for each other. So thank you so much, guys, for coming out. Thank you, Michael, for returning from your second honeymoon or whatever, from your little vacation. It was great. God bless.
Yes.
Okay.
See ya.
Ending stream.